night.
Hi, folks. It's Tom. I'm back with Strange Journeys and my ETs and our special guest, Lewis, this week. I hope everybody's doing great, and I hope you're tuning in and watching, and I hope you're ready to get started on this week because we got a lot to cover, and I think we're gonna have a good time. So everybody say hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello. All right. Are y'all ready to get started?
Yes.
Let's go. And of course, we are live. Strange Journeys podcast live stream, a most unusual podcast. Now, like every show, we want to start with a latest sighting. Now, as I explained to the guys before we came on the air, we are about 2 weeks late on this sighting. But the thing is, this sighting happened while we were doing our live stream 2 weeks ago. So we wanted to talk about this one. So Dagny has got our latest sighting.
All right.
Go ahead, Dagny.
So 2 weeks ago when we were doing our show, I was almost late to the show because I was watching the launch of the SPACEX Dragon. I could not put it down, and I was like, come on, wait, it's almost over. I watched every second of that launch live stream, and you can still rewatch it live stream on, I think it's NASA and SpaceX Crew Dragon launch 2020. So that was 2 weeks ago. That was on May 30th at 3:22 Eastern Time. There were two astronauts, Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley, were launched into space for the first time by a commercial company. They were NASA astronauts, but NASA has not had funding, and SpaceX stepped up and said, let's send some people out. That was their test to see if they could get people into space successfully. While they were launching, they showed every second of it live stream. It was so amazing. Like, even the announcers knew every moment by moment detail to tell us ahead of time, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. However, when we're like, I think it was about 6 minutes in, T plus 6 minutes. So, there was T minus many hours and positive. And about 6 minutes after ignition, the crew finally reached 0G, where things started floating. And it was a cool moment. But at that moment, they also are showing a video link to their Falcon 9 rocket first stage, which is about to break away from them and go back to Earth and land in the middle of the ocean on a ship, upright. I can't believe they did it. They did it all successfully. It was fantastic. I can't believe what they did. But while they're showing the fins of that Falcon 9 rocket from one view and the astronauts from the other, all of a sudden you see this thing dart across the bottom of the screen. And it is unmistakable. And I was watching it that moment, and of course, I'm a UFO fanatic, so I actually discounted what I was thinking. I was like, psh. But I thought it was strange that only a moment later they shut down the feed, the live feed. It's the only time they don't announce that they're shutting down the United. Originally, they say, we have an expected live feed gonna fail now, and then it happens. I mean, they announce it every time except for this time. At this time, they just say they lost footage, and then when it comes back, they just say, we got it back. Well, I thought that was so strange that I took a screenshot at that moment because I was like, I just saw UFOs, I swear to God, and now you guys are shutting down the cameras. I said, that's weird. So I took a live screenshot, but I accidentally deleted it because I was like, there's nothing on this one. I said, this is a boring picture. So anyway, just a couple days after that, all these people are coming out with, everyone's saying the same thing. They saw these UFOs too, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I wasn't just dreaming them, you know? And they've asked Elon Musk about it. Elon Musk is a very sarcastic man, and he is pretty funny about his reaction to it. He's basically like, if it is, it is, you know?
Wow.
So he's not giving them very strong information. But there are two different sites I've found. Both the express.co.uk is a certain online magazine type thing, and I don't know how credible they are. They noticed it. They did an article on the cut in the live footage as the anomaly was spotted, and so you can actually look that one up. But I did find something very conflicting. Is if you go a couple weeks earlier to their launch of the Falcon 9 earlier without people, they claim the same thing. So I don't know whether to trust this source or not.
Well, I think it could be happening every time.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
But then I found another site called TRT World, and they responded that it was just the type of rocket that they use, and they tried to show you. And
of course.
I mean, they go through it scientifically and everything, and I'm very well versed in science. I have ridiculous amounts of science background, and I got to say that to me, they were making it up, completely making it up. And
all right, well, let's look at it then.
It's interesting.
All right, but you saw it yourself. Live.
I saw it, and I decided to take a screenshot because I thought it was so strange.
Cool. All right, well, let's look at it. I found the video of the live feed, and I edited it down to the two main ones that I saw. So here. All right, Dagny, is that what you saw?
It is. The second shot that you showed was the one that I noticed live stream. And actually, there are a couple, like one other angle that I saw it from was much clearer.
All right. I couldn't find that one. I'll have to go back and see. Do some more digging.
It was that exact moment.
Well, thoughts, everybody?
It was a weather balloon.
Must
That's
have
usually
been.
what they say.
Space gas or swamp gas. Well, I guess it would be space gas. Yeah, yeah. I thought it was pretty clear. You know, I'm no expert, obviously, but I saw what I saw. You
One of
know,
the one of the NASA
Well, it's
engineers
pretty
that they asked
logical.
about it said it's definitely going too fast for anything we have. On Earth.
makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Well, we can break this
It's
down.
only logical.
Yeah,
It's only logical when we do something new into space, somebody's going to be watching.
that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. Before we get into the main part of the show, I want to back up and reintroduce everybody. We got Christine Rogers down in the bottom. Well, she is on my screen. I don't know. Author Christine Rogers. And, okay. Yeah, there she is. And she's one of our show sponsors this week. And we have Dagny that just gave us the update on the sighting of the dragon flight. That was, I saw something. That's just me. And my buddy Donnie Mills, he's part of the ETs, and this is his first chance to be with us live. So hopefully we'll be hearing from him more. And then our special guest today, actually, he's over here, past Donnie, Lewis. We're going to fully introduce him in just a minute. But right now, we have a word from our sponsor, Christine Rogers. Christine, were you crying?
Yeah. You did such an amazing job with that.
Well, good.
Sorry.
I hope you get some books sold. Hoping somebody will come buy your books. All right, guys, we've been telling you about it for over a week now, but we have Lewis Powell IV, and he is our special guest today. He is the founder, I guess you'd call it, right, of Southern Spirit Guide.
Yes.
And also the author of Haunted Alabama, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. But tell us a little bit more about your background and where you came from and how you ended up here.
Well, I'm from LaGrange, Georgia, where I still live. And I always had an interest in, mysterious paranormal things. Started collecting books at a very young age, books of ghost stories, starting with the great Catherine Tucker Wyndham. And over time, I have ended up amassing this rather large library. And about 10 years ago, I took my fascination and decided to start writing my blog, the Southern Spirit Guide. And it was during the time that I had been writing that I ended up writing Southern Spirit Guides Haunted Alabama. And also during this time, I've started to meet people and actually go out and investigate some of these places. And
Nice.
Things have been really fascinating.
Good. All right. Before we really get into the meat of things, what's some of your outside interests that have nothing to do with the paranormal?
Well, I'm a theater person. I have a theater degree, and actually that
Nice.
does kind of feed into my ghost passion. In that, every good theater worth its salt is going to be haunted by a ghost, and
That's right.
so many of my stories involve theaters. I have other stories as well, but I some of my favorite stories are really centered on theaters.
I
Oh, okay.
really like the opening to your page, all about the theaters. That was
Oh
awesome.
yes.
You wrote
Well,
it really well.
Well, thank you. That was my latest blog post.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Donnie's here at my house using my other laptop, and Lynn's back in the other bedroom trying to get her laptop connected and trying to juggle all this. But I've done some theater. It's been 30, 40 years ago, but
Right.
I can touch on it. Oh, God, that just reminded me. You've obviously heard of the Sanger Theater here in Mobile, right?
Oh yes.
I have a picture that someone gave me that was taken in the theater in the dressing room of a little girl standing in front of a dressing table mirror getting ready.
Uh-huh.
And in the mirror, you see another little girl dressed just like her standing behind her, but in the foreground, there's only the little girl.
Oh wow.
Standing behind her is only in the mirror. And I
wow.
saw that picture getting ready for the show and just should have made the connection. But all right. I'll have to share that. I mean, it's on the Strange Journeys podcast page.
Okay.
As well as a bunch of other pictures like that. But I just thought about it. But, well, what was there I mean, you said you'd always been interested in the paranormal, the weird, and the strange. Was there a particular event or a circumstance that just kind of blossomed it?
Well, when I was about 3 or 4, I at that time was an only child, and my sisters had not been born yet. And this one night, my parents were having trouble putting me to bed. And my dad was tasked with being the one to take me in and put me to bed. So he walks me into my bedroom, sits me down on the end of the bed, and says, "Go to sleep." Turns around, goes to the door, and turns off the light and goes into his bedroom. So I sat there for a few moments, just considering my options, and eventually decided I did, in fact, need to go to bed. So I pull the covers up, and as I'm sliding my feet under the covers, my left foot comes into contact with something that was very cold and very clammy.
Wow.
And in my little mind, I thought, that it felt like the bottom of my foot was touching the bottom of another foot. And I was totally freaked out, jumped out of bed, ran into my parents' room, explained what had happened, and begged them to let me spend the night with them.
Right.
And they declined. And my dad takes me back to my bedroom. We pull the covers back and discover that, of course, there was nothing there. We had never really experienced paranormal activity in that house, and we didn't after that. But I do recall that around that time, I had started having nightmares about the floor-to-ceiling window that was right next to my bed. And those nightmares involved something trying to come through that window to get me. And, I don't know if that is related to what I felt, or maybe perhaps it was just something that I kind of made up. But that was my first real paranormal experience. And then it was some years later that my mother took me to the public library to hear a storyteller. And this storyteller is telling stories from Catherine Tucker Wyndham. And I was fascinated.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I was given a copy of her 13 Georgia Ghosts and Jeffrey, and things have never been the same since.
Right. Well, yeah, that kind of gave you the ghost stories, plus, I guess, kind of fit into your writing ability because
Yes.
of the writing style and everything.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you mentioned a while ago you put together this blog and everything. When did you start officially say, hey, let's do this?
Well, that was in August of 2010. And the previous year, I had been laid off from corporate America at the height of the recession. And I had spent nearly 2 years trying to find a job and did not have much luck. And I really needed an escape. So the idea of a blog came to me, and naturally I decided it would need to be about ghosts. And so looking around, I realized there were no really good sources for stories on Southern ghosts. And so I just started writing, and I've created this massive library now. And, I have kind of put my name out there, and some people are now recognizing it.
Good. That's awesome. I think there's only one way to go, and that's up. I mean, you built a solid foundation. We're going to get to your Haunted Alabama book in a minute, but are there other books in the works?
Yes.
Planned?
Some years ago, I started working on a haunted theater book, and recently I've started revisiting that. So I'm just about to go on vacation next week, and I'm hoping to spend at least a portion of the week working on that book and gathering all this stuff together and rewriting and working on it.
Right.
Will it have
Excellent.
Oh, yes. I try to include photographs whenever I can in my blog. Plus, whenever I visit places, go out and, take my own pictures. And quite possibly I might be able to use that Sanger theater picture.
Yes. I will say this. When it was given to me by a credible friend that I know and wouldn't be putting out false things. But on the other hand, I have not officially confirmed that it was in the dressing room of the Sanger.
Okay.
But my friend that I trust gave it to me, so that's where I stand on that.
In working on my Alabama book, I actually tried to find some information on hauntings at the Sanger, and I wasn't successful in that. I think it was later that I think Elizabeth Parker posted something on Facebook about how she was going to investigate the Sanger, and I was excited to see that.
Yeah, they're rare. There's not been a lot. One or two stories. I think she was a costumer there at one time, saw some things, but I won't even go there because I don't remember the details. But, we'll talk about this in a minute, that's actually where we're going next. In talking about your Strange LaGrange tour, I wanted to bring that up and talk about that because that's the foundation for this live stream podcast now. Was the tours that I led in downtown Mobile, and I've done hundreds of hours of research on the paranormal and the regular history of Mobile.
Right.
Though I'm no expert, but just tell us about how the Strange LaGrange tour came about.
Well, I ended up. It started out really as an acting job. I was asked to be a part of a ghost tour that they were having that was sponsored by the local Troup County Historical Society. And they asked me to be a part of this, and I sat down and talked with the storyteller who was organizing it, and she explained what it was. And it was basically they were recreating citizens that were dead, that local dead citizens,
Right.
and they were having people, recreate these people's lives, and they were calling it a ghost tour because everybody on it was dead. And I immediately told her, no, it doesn't work that way. You can't call it a ghost tour if they're not any actual ghosts. And so they ended up renaming the tour, the Mystery in Our History tour. And so after the tour was over, the head of the Historical Society said, I need to talk to you. I understand you know something about ghosts, and I would like to include some real ghost stories. So we talked and continued talking, and then early last year, she just called me out of the blue and said, we would like to set up a downtown ghost tour. Would you be interested? And so I jumped at that and started doing the research, and I have so far led a number of tours. Unfortunately, with all of the coronavirus mess, that had to cease. And but it should be resuming. I think it's the 26th is our first tour after the virus.
Excellent. Because I think one of our ETs, Tim Shepard, his Ravenman tours is kicking off next weekend, the 20th, I think. But he's coming up in a video. Say, hey.
One of my roommates.
Hey, how you doing? That's fine. Like the fried chicken video. Remember that one? The guy singing about fried chicken, and his dad keeps coming through the back and doing all kinds of stuff. That was a lot of fun. All right, you mentioned this earlier.
Okay.
Christine brought this up this week as we were going back and forth planning this story or this show. But you did mention that you do investigate some of these places.
Yes, I have. And most of the investigations have been just going on public investigations. But over time, I've kind of gotten to know some of these groups, in particular, Scare of Alabama, that is located up in the Birmingham area. But also, as a result of the tour here, I have been asked to investigate with a group called the Spirits of Lanier. And they have come down and investigated so far 2 locations that are actually here on my tour. The first location, which was the Troup County Historical Society building, we had some just fantastic results. I have only on rare occasions actually had experiences where actual experiences on an investigation. And this investigation actually had something blow on my hand twice.
Wow.
And the first time it happened, I'm looking around to see if there are any vents, what would be causing that. And I was actually standing there right next to somebody, and they felt it as well. And so we spoke up, and the person in charge of that portion of the investigation said, if you can do it again, please do. And again, there was this breath on my hand, a sustained breath. And it was really cool and really unexpected. But during this investigation, we ended up getting a lot of spirit box activity. At one point, it even called an elderly investigator a whore, and she was a little offended by that, I think. We also randomly had a spirit speaking Spanish, which was really interesting. And interestingly enough, among these, this group of investigators is comprised of a family, and they're all Pentecostals. And at one point, one of the young ladies thought that she actually had something that had attached itself to her back. And so she tells her grandmother, and her grandmother starts speaking in tongues and swatting away whatever it is on her back. All of this happened on an elevator, and I had never experienced anybody speaking in tongues or anything like that. But to have it happen in the close confines of an elevator was really even more astounding.
Wow, that's
That was an
amazing.
adventure.
Yes.
Well, it reminded me of the story that Lynn told in our Personnel Paranormal show, where we were in the Kennedy building downtown Mobile. She and I were in a basement room, and she just had this eerie feeling come over and said, I got to get out. And then when we were reviewing the recordings later, just before she said that, she on the recording, you hear the word Allah.
Oh.
And then a conversation in a foreign language.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was a short conversation, honestly, but these were what they call Class A EVPs that I caught on my digital recorder.
Wow.
I mean, I've never taken it to get it, translated or whatever, but it sounded Middle Eastern to me. But that's always cool.
Wow.
All right. Now we're going to transition. Tell us, break down Southern Spirit Guide to us before we get into the story. Just break down what it all means, how it works, how it operates.
I started this blog really to provide some academic rigor, so to speak, with these stories. One of the things I had always seen were I had seen stories where the history would be wrong, or the historical facts were totally inaccurate.
Right.
But also I kind of liked seeing, different authors writing about these different places, and they would include, different stories, and it would seem that neither of them had seen the other's work. So in a way, I'm taking all of this information, pulling it together into a more academically written blog entry, but also making sure that I'm including all the citations and all of the sources, because that's very important in this in the paranormal world. It's something not everybody does, but I do definitely appreciate it when people do that. And I did have to kind of figure out how I define the South, and so I decided on a list of 13 states, including the District of Columbia, of course 13 being a great number, and so I cover Alabama, District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. And I search out information in newspapers and blogs. I, of course, rely on my library very heavily.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just kind of downright digging on the internet, and really trying to see if these are valid resources that I can use.
Right. I think it's cool that you say that, that you're documenting and providing sources.
Yes.
I mean, that was one thing when I did my tour, I had sources. I mean, granted, on a tour, you can't really do that, but,
Right.
Say, oh, I got this from what, but I had it in my notes in case anybody asked.
Yes.
Where did you get this? Well, this was published here, that kind of thing. So
and one of the wonderful things about having a tour is you get guests on the tour who start telling you stories, and I've been able to actually include some of their stories, and some of them have actually backed up the information that I have.
Exactly.
So it's really just fascinating.
Well, I'm hoping Lynn gets on because that very thing you just brought up, I had planned on talking about later. One of the stories that you told, we had somebody on the tour told us something we'd never heard before.
Oh,
Well, that
wow.
was a personal thing. But just to back up a little bit, when you're talking about the tour, I did want to mention how cool is the name of his tour, guys? Strange LaGrange. Because we are Strange Journeys. And Christine had a question in our private chat about the theater in Auburn, Alabama. Have you ever investigated there, or do you have any stories?
I have read plenty about it and have written about it. I included it in my Alabama book, and also included the information that not only is the old chapel, which was the theater haunted, but then you also have the ghost has supposedly transferred over to the modern theater building.
Wow.
Right.
And I do have a friend of mine who is a theater professor at Auburn, and she confirmed that, you know, there are stories told about that building. I don't think she's much of a believer, but you know, it really is. It's fascinating to kind of have my information backed up. But also, I went on there was a ghost tour a couple years ago on Halloween night that was sponsored by two of the guys who wrote the Haunted Auburn Opelika book with Fate Seraphim. And I went on their tour and found out that much more of the university is haunted than I ever suspected.
Wow.
They included that even the Jordan Hare Stadium has activity, and they said that frequently
Wait a minute, Lewis. Wait a minute. Is Jordan Hare?
Oh, Jordan Hare.
Jordan.
Sorry. I'm not an Auburn fan. I was raised a Georgia fan.
And neither am I, but, you know, being from Alabama, it's Jordan Hare.
Okay, Jordan Hare.
I just had to interject that. Sorry.
That's fine. But, the guys on the tour explained that many of the security people would frequently see these kind of amorphous black masses moving up and down the ramps of the theater. Sometimes, you know, they would look up and see the figure kind of leaning over the railing, looking at them. And one of the coolest stories was that a security guard was going through there one night, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees a man on the field dancing. And when he turned to look directly at the figure, it disappeared. But as soon as he turned his head, he could continue to see it out of his peripheral vision. So eventually he ended up watching this for about 10 minutes, and then the man just danced right off the field and disappeared. I really want to know who that was dancing and celebrating on the field.
Yes.
But again, I had someone on my tour who had worked as a security guard in the stadium, and she confirmed all of this information and said, yes, in fact, there was a great deal of activity throughout that stadium.
Wow, that's amazing. There's Lynn. She made it back. Are you laying down?
You know, that Auburn thing, it might have even been Suge Jordan.
Yeah.
The first time he beat Alabama.
Uh-oh. Yeah. All right. We're going to get into some of these stories in just a minute. Lynn, you're making a lot of racket over there. What's going on with that? Anyway, we're going to go into our next sponsor. Right now, sponsor number 2 for today's show, Frank Loves Books. And now we want to get into some specific stories. So, Louis, what I was going to ask is, do you have a favorite or favorite stories out of all these you've compiled? Is there one that sticks out in your mind or two?
Well, actually, there was after watching your previous podcast, there was a story that I remembered, and that involves a phantom phone call. And this happened at the Mountainside Theater in Cherokee, North Carolina. The Mountainside is a large amphitheater where the outdoor historical drama Unto These Hills has played every summer since 1950. And this theater, it has quite a few years on it, and it really does have a huge amount of paranormal activity associated with it, as well as the city of Cherokee beyond. But this story was told to me by a friend of mine who worked up there. I worked up in the Mountainside Theater several summers when I was in college, and then went back up there to work just a few years ago. And this story happened in 2013, where the organization that runs the theater for Halloween was having a zombie run at stage at the theater and going all the way up into cast housing. And of course, the zombie run is, these people pay and you're basically chased by zombies all the way up to the top of the hill. And one evening after they had shut everything down, two of my friends were actually living up in cast housing, and they were living up there by themselves. And they hear, all these police sirens and an ambulance siren, and they realized that it was coming from the theater. So they went running down the hill to investigate, and there are all these police cars, there's an ambulance, and they asked, well, what's going on? And the police told them that they had received a phone call from a woman who was hysterical, saying she needed help, and that, she was at the theater and something was trying to get her, and then she hung up. And they traced the phone call to a payphone that's located on one of the porches right outside the stage manager's office. So they went in and started looking at the payphone. The payphone has been disconnected for some years.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And they never figured out who it was that made this phone call, or why any of the spirits would be so upset that they would, have to call 911 and report that something was trying to get them. But I do have a photograph of that payphone.
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Should be down at the bottom. Share screen.
All right. Let's see. Oh, okay. We'll see if this works.
Yeah. Yeah, then it'll pop up a window and you select which tab or whatever you want to use.
Okay. Let's see. This will actually share the or maybe okay. And I don't know. Can y'all see that?
Not yet.
Okay. This may not work. Okay. It doesn't appear that. Okay.
I mean, down on your little screen at the
Yes.
bottom. Wait a minute. Do that again.
Okay. Let's see. Share
I saw it down at the bottom. Maybe I can. After you do it, I can share it.
Okay. Well, it's on a different tab on my Chrome.
Yeah.
So
it should pop up a little window, and then you select which tab or select tab, Chrome tab or something.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Yeah. There it is.
Cool.
Okay, here we go. There it is.
That's a picture of the payphone. And I can scroll up. There's a picture of the Mountainside Theater. That's the top of the house. But this theater has had a tremendous amount of activity. I've had experiences there.
Okay. Whoops.
Oh.
We keep listening. Technical difficulties, folks.
Okay. There you go. Oh, right. Okay. But this theater has had a tremendous amount of paranormal activity. I had an experience when I was up there in college. The Cherokee people who still occupy that area believe in a race of little people. And these are essentially, they're kind of like leprechauns in a way, but they are small people who live in the forest, and their job is to protect the Cherokee. And the belief in these people is very widespread among even the modern day Cherokee. And one of the things we were told was if you go down to the theater at night, you have to announce yourself. Otherwise, the little people will play tricks on you. So this one night, I was working in the costume shop while I was there. And so I had a night where I had to do the cast's laundry. And so late one night after the show, I had to walk down the hill to the theater by myself to put the laundry in the dryer. And as I'm heading there, I had been reading about the little people and had learned their name in Cherokee. And so I'm muttering this under my breath in an attempt to memorize the name. So I get down to the theater, I put my laundry in the dryer, and I start back up. And for several yards along the driveway, there is very thick mountain forest on one side. And as I'm walking parallel to this forest, I hear this high-pitched, childish giggle.
Wow.
And I stopped. I looked into the woods. I said, hello. And again, there was this giggle. And I thought, that doesn't sound like any bird I know about. I don't know what this is. Hello? And again, it happened again. And it happened again. So at that point, I was just like, okay, third time's the charm. I'm leaving. So I took off and ran all the way back to my dorm room. And the next day I spoke with one of my Cherokee friends, and her response was, well, they were laughing at you because you couldn't say their name correctly in the language. But I am very thankful I did not actually see them, because if you see a little person, you're supposed to not speak about it for between 1 to 7 years, depending on the source. And if you speak about it before then, the Cherokee Little People will kill you.
Wow.
And there are supposed stories about all of this. Though I have had some friends who did actually see some things, though they waited the prescribed period, and thankfully they are still with us.
Yes, awesome. All right. I wanted to get into some stories, but give us
Okay.
real quick before we get into some stories. What's your research regimen? I mean, what are your research steps?
Well, I do a lot of Google searching,
Yeah.
haunted places in Lexington, Kentucky, and
Right.
I'll take these lists and start trying to figure out which ones are the most valid sources. Obviously, if it's from a newspaper or some type of news source, I'm more than likely to trust it rather than just a random blog. If I do come across a blog, I try to check sources, see who it is writing this blog, who
Right.
is submitting this information. But also, I've started going out to sites like Ghost in America, which it captures firsthand accounts of people who have had paranormal experiences, and I read through a lot of them. A lot of them are, ghosts in private homes, and I
Right.
saw a ghost at my grandmother's house and stuff like that. Occasionally, they will provide a place that I can actually research.
Right.
And I really look into seeing if there is a ring of truth to this story. And I have begun using several of those stories in my writing. But also, it's a matter of talking to people. I've even had people on my blog submit me their experiences, and I've gone on and published several of those.
Good. Well, that's that. I mean, that's basically what I did when I was researching my tours. Started with a broad Google search and then started picking up bits and pieces here and there, and that goes for America and things like that. But finding, well, you mentioned newspapers. The profile picture on our podcast page, Strange Journeys, of the Wolf Woman of Mobile.
Okay.
That was the newspaper artist rendering of eyewitness accounts, and it was published in the Mobile Press Register back in the early 70s. I mean, it actually made the papers. But the library in Mobile has a great place called the History and Genealogy section. It's actually a totally separate building, and you have to ask for it, but they have a file behind the desk of actual newspaper clippings of all the weird, strange, and unusual stuff that's ever been published in papers in this area.
A couple of years ago, I visited the Alabama Department of Archives and History in Mobile, in Montgomery, and I discovered that in their vertical file they have several file folders full of ghost stories. And the amazing thing was finding some of these articles, and many of them were old enough that they likely were used by Catherine Tucker Wendell. So it was really interesting to start seeing that actual source material.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to see that some of this actually made the paper. There was another wolf sighting in Mobile, but it made a paper like the what was it? The Weekly World Report or something, one of those weird off papers, but it's talked about a wolf man that jumped off a ship at the port in Mobile and was cornered in an alley, and the police had to shoot it and kill it. So we've actually had 2 wolf sightings in Mobile.
Wow.
If you believe it.